and this is your end of day as well as end of week market recap for the 22nd of August. So what a week, what a way to end the week. Before we get going here, and I'm going to go through a lot of the moves today, and just how crazy of a day this was today to kind of finish out a week that did not have good price action, but had some rays of light as we kind of went into today. I have on my partying glass shirt. It is Travers Weekend in Saratoga, so this is one of I have many favorite places in Saratoga, but this is a great place to go, and that's the partying glass. So we just want to make sure I'm representing, and look forward to a great week of racing here in Saratoga this weekend. So what do I have up in front of and before we review before we review the day and the price action and what the charts look like, I want to just talk about what this is showing you at this point. This is the Fed Fund Futures. I talk a lot about this and have talked a lot about this recently. And I think it's got a lot more attention than usual. This is Fed Fund Futures and what we're implying for that September meeting of September 17th. In terms of the chance of a rate cut. So we moved up a little bit, but not back to where we were about 2 weeks ago. There's now, and what I look at is this column right here and this row for September 17th. There's now an 81% chance that or at least this is what the market is implying. Again, it changes, right? The market adjusts to new information, right? At one point, this was pricing it in like a 97% chance of a rate cut. That doesn't mean like that nothing is going to change. That's what it's pricing in at that time. And if there's new information that is to the contrary, the market changes. Just like for the price action in S&P and in the Qs and individual names, constantly adjusting to new information. So I want to make sure that people understand that, because I think it gets confused when people see 95% chance, like that means that's it, they're cutting interest rates. No, it means right now at this present time, that's what the market is implying. So right now at this time, right, the market is implying an 81% chance that they're going to cut interest rates in September. Now, this is going to change again. It's not going to stay, so you think you're like, aha, they're definitely cutting interest rates in September. It really is going to depend on all the information that we're going to get from now until September 17th. And there's going to be a lot of information that's going to come at you. We're going to get, next week, if we look at what we have ahead, we're going to get another gauge of inflation. We're going to get the core PCE price index, right? That is, just make sure I've got the right dates in here. On the 29th, you're going to get the PCE price index, right? We get that information on the last, usually the last trading day of the month. Right, that's how that works. Then if we go if we go further into September, we are going to get another jobs report. And I don't know if there's numbers out there for that yet. They're only looking for 80,000, so it's a pretty low bar for that. But this is going to change. So what caused, we were sitting here yesterday, and I'm going to bring up the next screen that I want to go over here. And then we will get to a bunch of charts, but I want to go over, just kind of the dynamics of today a bit. So here's my note from yesterday. Right. And we were at 70% yesterday. So the market was discounting things. And and not only was Fed Fund Futures, but just the overall market was leaning lower. And the sentiment kind of dropped into this Jackson Hole speech. And the reason why is because Powell does not have a great history of being dovish, especially at these Jackson Hole events. I showed you in yesterday's video that the performance around that speech. Another thing that I listened to this morning, which I always listen to Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene, and Tom Keene is over in was over in Jackson Hole, and he was talking about how it just had a different feel this morning. Right, it just felt much quieter. So that's on the bolt. When you have sediment like that, and you can, regardless of like these surveys that come out every week where people answer to a survey in whatever particular way, they're probably not answering the survey completely 100% honest about what they're carrying in terms of positions. Maybe they answer it in terms of what they're feeling and in terms of how they feel with these surveys. So you have to take those surveys that come out with every week, like with a grain of salt. That it's So anyway, so it's much. I think it's much more important if you look around and you kind of make some observations. And to me, like hearing Tom Keene this morning talking about how quiet Jackson Hole is, rather than like a really upbeat uh, atmosphere, kind of like told me something this morning. It said, hey, people are really worried about what Powell's going to say, hence the price action in the market over the last week. One other thing that I want to mention too, because by the way, if you're not if you're a trader in this market or even an investor, and if you're not used to being wrong as a trader, right, it's something that you need to get over. Right. And I know it's very easy and I saw like a couple of people called me out and they said, hey, you said that you weren't expecting anything for today. No, I wasn't. I said in the very last sentence here, I said, I hope I am wrong. And Powell says something like keeping rates at 4.5% is really starting to burden the American consumer and those who have debt. Now, he didn't say exactly that, but he did acknowledge that there's some weakness uh, in the employment area, and that's something that is different, right? So he did acknowledge that, and at least that's a change in tone. What I think the very last thing that I said in yesterday's video was that we need to hear some type of change, and that will be enough to rally the markets. Because right now the market has a pretty stark view of what Powell hasn't been able to acknowledge that and at least say that that is something that they're watching. So that's all that this market needed, considering what transpired this week. Another thing that I think I pointed out last week was the tick index yesterday, and talking about how there was just heavy selling all day. Various times yesterday there were sell programs. Right now, you contrast that with today. I think I have that, and so you could take a look at this. Right, notice how many times the tick index hit 1,000 yesterday. Heavy selling. Right, there are some really spooked investors this week, and contrast that with today. You have a knee jerk reaction. Look at the complete opposite, right? Of all those ticks yesterday and massive buying going on today, right? All these people, it reminds me of, like, I think it was the movie Caddyshack, right? When they announced that everybody could go back in the pool, right? And everybody rushes all into the pool at the same time. I believe if it's not Caddyshack, it's another 80s movie. But regardless, like that's what today felt like, is everybody, oh my God, get out of the pool. We're really worried about, Powell not going to cut interest rates in September or shutting the door on that. And he didn't do that today. And because of the sentiment, we had a pretty decent move higher. Does this mean that all is clear and all is well? I don't know. I think you just kind of have to do your analysis every day, take note of what's changing in the marketplace, and you're going to find good setups and good trades. One of the things too, I like to talk about sometimes, like, the popular view, and sometimes I think it's incorrect. For example, one of the things that I've heard recently, and we're going to get to the charts now, I think, now that I've gone over all this, I did want to bring up too, I'd give you just one more visualization as I'm telling the story. Right, here was the price action for the day. SPY up 1.5% today. Qs right up about the same. Huge movement in small caps and micro caps today. Big catch up there. And I'm going to talk more about the small caps in a minute. But also the cryptos had a huge move today. Right when Bitcoin looks like it's breaking down, it closed below the 50-day moving average. False breakdown and snap back higher. I feel like we've seen that a lot this year, where things tend to like lean lower. Looks like, just like everybody out of the pool, right? It's a technical sell signal, and then all of a sudden it reverses, and everybody's right back in. Take a look at the price action today too. Very much like risk on for the day. Uh, the solar, both traditional and more clean energy type names did very well today. Look at OIH. That's the thing that surprised me most today. OIH was up 5% today. That's a big move. The banks, right? Which are a big part. The financials are a big part of the small caps ETF IWM. Metals and mining did well. Gold and silver still did well today. By the way, I'll try to bring up that chart too if I don't forget. Let me go to the SPY chart. But one of the things I started to go into this narrative that you hear in the market that is completely wrong, by the way, right? And what I'm referring to is, oh, this market, it's all about AI. Now, yes, AI has been certainly a big theme this year, right? And it probably will be going forward. But that's not the only thing that's going on in this market. And perhaps that may not be everything that the market needs, right? You've got many other themes going on in this market. You've got automated driving. You've got the whole thing going on with space and satellites and, you know, possibly, air taxis, right? These are little things, again, these are little pieces of different market movements that are very interesting. Now, the AI is a bigger movement and that covers a lot, but there's also robotics too, which is somewhat AI, but it's also kind of its own thing. But my point is, there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of innovation in fintech right now, right? With everything that we're seeing with in the crypto space as well. So there's a lot of different things going on. Now they may not all hit at the same exact time, but it's okay for some of these groups, such as AI, to take a breather and take a step back, right? That's just all, and I know most of you have heard this before, but rotation is the lifeblood of a bull market. You're supposed to get rotation. So let's talk about SPY, right? No, number one, and again, it's kind of tough to make that call yesterday, especially ahead of today's event, but we never really broke down, right? We just checked back to the top of the value area. We did not break that. We did break below the 5 in the 20-day moving average, which means that we lost some upside momentum, but right smack, one, all it takes is one day for that to be, for all these things to be retaken, right? And the holding of support was important. Now, I will give you a level to watch for next week. Now, again, this is just this week's value area. It's not going to be the value area for next week is going to be this. See this gray box here. It's not lit up yet because we're not into next week, but the activity has been determined, and thus the value area for next week has been determined. This week we kind of, all the movement happened in the first couple hours of the day, as it usually does, and we slammed right into this top of the value area for the week, and we just couldn't break through that. 646.11 is the number to watch there. And if we kind of check back here, which would be nice, by the way, I would like this. We check back to 643 and then go out and up like that. That would be pretty cool. The Qs, couple things that I mentioned yesterday and with the Qs is that, hey, this we were flashing a bearish 80% roll, but I mentioned we were only about a half a percent between uh, needed to negate that rule. And that's exactly what happened today. So we got to move back here. We did close back above the 5 and 20-day moving average. But for now, I think the Qs have kind of lost that leadership. Now, again, they could retake that leadership at any time. I'm just talking about in the short term. Why do I make that observation? Because notice we're not near the new highs. And there's other things that have broken out to new highs. Take, for example, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, sneaky, but they're at new highs. That's it. This is new highs for the Dow. So very that's record setting move. Also, when you look at the equally weighted, this is also what really impressed me today. The equally weighted S&P also closed at new highs. So what does that tell, so what are these things that tell you that an index that is the same thing as SPX, but is reweighted differently so that there's no bias, so that every name has the same exact weight, right? It's telling me that there's a lot of strength under the hood right now for this to break out to new highs. And meanwhile, the Qs are not. It means that there's other things going on, believe it or not, than AI, regardless of the narrative that media tells you that that's the only thing going on. False, right? Because otherwise, the RSP would not be breaking out to new highs. That means that there's a lot of areas that are contributing to the overall market move. Let's talk about IWM for a minute. So IWM, I literally write my midday note. I've been, probably talked about this VPOC lingering up here for probably about, every day this month. And sure enough, we break out of the value area, we check back, and bam, we move up and take out the VPOC up there. By the way, this is how IWM tends to work, in my opinion. IWM moves much more on events than it does like on like just grinding higher. And this has happened before on when there's been a big difference in like the CPI report, right? You'll see IWM really react to that. So the small caps are very sensitive to these either economic events or when Powell, the Fed, speak. It really moves. It's the same thing. Like another thing is a different example of that, of when IWM really moves. You go back to when we were in the middle of COVID, right? They came out with the vaccine. IWM made a huge move. That was a huge day of rotation once they announced that there was a vaccine that was coming out and being ready to be used for COVID. IWM had a massive day, right? So some type of big headline comes out like that, and you get a big move up in the small cap. So just like today, and this is going to be an interesting overhead supply area, this VPOC being taken out. And we'll see if IWM can overcome that. But really, this is a place to take targets. As I had mentioned in many newsletters that, hey, this would be an upside target. So we hit that. Right. I just want to go over a couple other things here too. Here's IWC, which also had a really nice move. And that's not all-time highs for IWC, but it is this year's highs. Right, here's the ultimate high. A couple other developments that happened. Take a look at the ASHR ETF. Now, this is not this is Shanghai, by the way, but this is a big move that happened this week in the Shanghai index. And again, it's called China A shares, right? This is not your Baidu and Alibaba and Futu. These are all local shares that are A shares. But this made a heck of a move. By the way, KWeb was no slouch this week either. This had a nice move. I remain long KWeb in the TTG trend portfolio. I added this a couple weeks back, and it's doing quite well. It's a bit more of a slower mover. I know some folks like to pick the individual names in the Chinese Internet Group, your Baba, Futu, Neo, which had a big day. I kind of I'm a little bit sketchy on owning China, and some of the names are really gappy, which makes sense because it does trade in the overnight session. But like a Baba, for instance, I noticed like Baba, take a look at what Baba did. If we go to this daily chart here for a second, it's tough. It gaps up like this and then it goes right back down, right? And I feel like Baba has done that a lot. So I would rather just own the whole group rather than have stock specific exposure there. Let me go to some individual movers, and then I'll just talk about and then we'll end with the market's performance. So I'm going to talk about Google for a minute. Why am I starting with Google? Google had one heck of a day. So I guess this is kind of I'm cheating here a little bit, and I'm going back to this was, I think, after the close. This was an announcement that was made yesterday that Meta and Google reportedly signed $10 billion AI cloud services deal. All right, that was number one. That was at the end of the day yesterday. Number two, Wall Street Journal reports today that Waymo, which is owned by Google, begins testing robotaxis in New York City. Now, this is a big thing. In my opinion, like this is coming, but it's a matter of time, right? The country and I think the world is going the route of robotaxis and automated driving, right? So the players that are involved in this, I think, have a pretty decent road ahead of them. Sorry, that's a horrible joke. I apologize for that, but it's too easy. But I think it's going to happen little by little. This is going to get adopted in the major cities. It's going to get adopted across the country. Why is this a good thing? Because I've been driving for a long time. It was a lot safer to drive back when I got my license years and years ago because there were no smartphones then. You weren't distracted, and there's a lot of people on the road right now who are texting as they're driving. That's not safe to be looking at your phone. And I don't have the data that talks about how many more accidents, but I know when I'm on the road, I don't feel safe when I look at other people wandering around on a highway who are looking at their phone and trying to text. So that's my personal view. You could disagree with me, but I just think this is the way this is going. And I think Google and I think Tesla are going to be big beneficiaries of this. And I think Tesla looks pretty good. It checked back here to the top of the value area. Nice move here. And, that's what you want to see, by the way, a breakout, a retest, retest hold, and a move back. So I think these are going to be very good. I think also some of the LiDAR type technology companies are going to be pretty good. I started a position in OUST today. Right. This is one of those companies involved in LiDAR technology. This has been a very strong stock, and I like to check back here to the top of the value area. Let me get back to Google here for just a second. We're not done with Google. Apple explores using Google Gemini AI to power their revamped Siri. Now, this isn't finalized, but we've just been hearing more and more about Google and some of these deals. And I just think that this is a good growth engine going forward. And Google is not extended here, just moved back above first day, moved back above its 5-day moving average. Let's see if this will trend. And I think also adding on dips, especially for some of these Mag 7 names, have really helped. But that stood out to me. This is a big day for Google and all those announcements. Again, not all of them finalized. Let me get to a couple other things too. I mentioned I would talk a little bit about. Let's talk about gold first. Gold sideways, sideways, sideways. I really like this chart. Take a look at the value area for this month. Right, it is very compressed. Right. Also, it is coiled. The moving averages are all wrapped around one another. Notice that we have this programmed into our value areas. High volatility expected. I am long GLD. I've been long GLD for a couple weeks in my regular trading account. I am looking for this breakout. Certainly, if you've been paying attention to what the gold miners are doing, they have been ripping. They were even, if you think today was more risk on, the gold miners made a new high today. This trade is not over with, and I don't think gold is over with either. I mentioned the false breakdown in Bitcoin. Yeah, it was closed below the 50-day moving average. Heck of a move today, up 4%. Is there anything like, would I go long on this candle today? I don't know. I think that this is sideways for a bit, and I think that there's better momentum in other cryptos, even though I'm not a crypto expert by any means. Take a look at Ethereum. Nice move here. I think it's still going up here as I speak. But this is a heck of a move. Crunch back down 5 and 20-day moving average, come in almost meet, and that's a nice move higher. So if I were to guess which one has the momentum and is going to go higher from here, I really like the Ethereum chart, and I really like the methodical. That's now twice since we've broken out of this that prices come back into the 20-day moving average, and boom, has bounced quite nicely. Right. A way that I'm playing this as well is this BMNR. Sorry, I hate the symbol, but it is what it is. Had this nice break into value, check back a little bit. Notice how it made a higher low, and I bought this today. All right. So it is 80. It does say 8 bullish, 80% rule, but we only have about a week left of August. Do I think we're going to get all the way up here? That's a 64% move. I would love it if we did, but I don't think that's very highly probable. Regardless, I'm long the stock and I'm looking for it to continue to go up and to the right. Another name too that I thought was interesting, and I covered in yesterday's video, I believe I covered it in yesterday's video. This bullish, I did buy a little bit of this, kind of like a small speculative position today. But hey, I got a signal today, right? It's now inside the value area for the week, so it managed to conquer that. This is going to be the new value area for next week. So as long as it stays above the 67.30, I'm going to try a speculative position in this. Another name that I mentioned right at the end of the day, yesterday's video, was that there was a lot of call buying in Unity Software. Big day for Unity Software, up 8%. Now, watch that top of the value area. Notice it struggled with this a little. It struggled with this 39 level a couple times here. Once back in July, twice beginning of the month, 3 times in the middle of the month. Now let's see if it can do it. But I do like how it's been going higher on the lows here, right? So another higher low here, which is a strong signal, technical signal. What else did I want to cover? Just a few other names. I'd like to go over some of the trades that I did. I went long rocket on this. It was the first trade that I did today. I had been noticing this and noticing same thing. You notice that a lot of my setups that I like is names that are in uptrends, 5 in the 20-day moving average kind of almost crunching together, price coming down, and then boom, right, nice move up. And I did already take some profits in this trade. By the way, how can I mention that and not open, which had a huge day, got to $5. Next stop up, I would say, is 550 for open door, but right environment for this, right? The talk of possibility of cutting interest rates. Right. TLT was actually rallied today, up 0.7 of a percentage point. Again, do I think we've got a major signal in TLT? No, not yet. We're still very sideways. Um, Here's what the shorter end of the curve is doing. Shy had a big day today. This is 1 to 3 year bonds, right? So again, remember, just going to insert this and I won't get off tangent here because I don't want to make the video too long. But the Fed does not control the long end of the curve. Sometimes it does have an effect when they cut short term interest rates that the long term interest rates go down too, but not always. So you have to be careful of that. The Fed does not control TLT, right? They do not control the long end of the curve. They control the overnight rate, which is the super short term interest rate. All right, moving on. A couple other names that I thought were interesting today. Oh, I want to talk about one name that nobody talks about, right? Everybody's infatuated with TEM and ALB. What about analog devices, right? It's so funny what names get popular and what names nobody cares about. Analog devices reported a good quarter this week in a tough environment and has rallied since, right? And has made a new high this year. That's very nice. Doesn't get any attention. Everybody wants to talk about TEM. Okay, TM had a nice day today, up 5%. Did not close on the highs, so I would be mindful of that. Um, Another one to the ALAB did fine today too. It did get above the 5 period moving average. Notice what I drew here, right? If you're trading in the short term, watch this 1 hour chart. Let's see if it can continue along this channel, ascending channel. But if it breaks, I would be careful with Astera Labs. Um, Couple other things. Palantir. Again, I feel like I go over Palantir in every one of these videos. It did not break the level that I talked about yesterday. Came close, 160.26. So I'm not saying it's game over for Palantir, but it's still inside its value area for the month. Again, there just may be some better opportunities out there for the time being. Remember, things can rotate around. Robinhood did get over its value area, but I tell you, um, I like another name right now a little bit more than Robinhood. Because I just think Robinhood might be due for some consolidation because it's been on one heck of a run this year. SoFi, look at SoFi getting out to new highs this year. Right? Another name that I think will benefit with the possibility of lower interest rates. All right, guys, I think I covered enough symbols. I think I covered enough stocks. I'm going to give you is there anything else that I missed? I think that's it for my list. Let me just give you the performance for the week, and then you can get on to some bigger and better things. Maybe go out, have a nice cool beverage as the summer is winding down. Here's the performance for the week. SPY did finish up for the week, even though declined for a good portion of the week. The diamonds, as we talked about, finished at new highs for the year. New all-time highs. IWM up 3.4%. Qs were down for the week. So again, it is what it is. These numbers don't lie. That's underperformance. So it's something that we'll keep tabs on and monitor going forward. International areas very strong, up 1.4%. Emerging markets, international developed 1.1. Gold, bonds both up. UUP was down for the week. So was Bitcoin, even though it had a heck of a rally today, and value outperformed for the week. Again, very interesting. Oil services were up 6.6% for the week. What's going on with oil services? Maybe it's a play on an easier access to energy for all the power that AI is soaking up. But here's what I don't know. I'm not sure. I have to research this a little bit further. But OIH, again, still below the 200-day moving average, but you could kind of look for a couple names in here. Tell you what I like, this Neighbors, which is really in the sideways base. Watch for the break of the base, right? Again, under-owned, right? Some things could go up a little bit more because they're under-owned. Also, if you want a small cap stock, look at RIG, Transocean, just above its value area. So again, I would keep an eye on these. Will I take a do I own any of them? No. Will I take a big position in them? No. But I'll participate if I see a break, especially a break out of that range for neighbors, NBR. Let me go back to the other screen here. Just to wrap up, banks had a huge week, up 5%. There's oil and gas, which had a big week. Gold miners, talked about them. Transports, energy, right? What didn't? So again, this is for the whole week. Tech and semis still finished down for the week. Tech finished down 1.2%. Semis also down slightly, and so on and so forth with the performance. I talked about ASHR having a big week. Also, things like Malaysia, Turkey, Mexico, FXI, China, right, all did pretty well. All right, guys, I'm going to leave it there. Make sure that you sign up for our midday note. Also, we have a special for our trading room. If you want to see how we break things down, minute by minute during the trading session, as well as how we do our homework while the market's closed, I will be putting out a new watch list for members. Here's how our watch list did for the week. Pretty decent. Um, all right, here's our and so what I do when I start on Sunday, I send members out a the weekend video where I go over all the observations from the past week, which we covered most of them, and then what I'm looking for going forward. And then I will go through all these names and I'll whittle them down from all the names from last week, and then I will incorporate new names to the list. But as you could see, a pretty decent. We had some good setups from here. Not every setup worked. Again, some of these names I just kind of keep on to watch and go from there. Guys, have a great weekend, and hope to hear from you over the weekend as a new member of Tribeca Trade Group. Take it easy, guys. Have a good weekend.